You own a small business, and it ain't easy, and it may be going okay. Or you could be stuck and barely making ends meet. It's about time for a pivot. Welcome to Small Business Pivots. It's time for you to generate some cash, some real cash. How does $1 million sound? Only 9% of small businesses earn over $1 million annually. But your host is a business coach and an entrepreneur. And we're going to talk to the small business owners who've done the $1 million and more. It's time to be inspired. Welcome to the 7-Figure Club. This is Small Business Pivots. And now your host, Michael Morrison.
All right, so welcome to another show, Small Business Pivots, where we bring a professional influencer from around the world and hear their story of how they pivoted and turned a grassroots from scratch business into a successful empire. And so today we have a very dear friend of mine that we've met over LinkedIn, and she is a charm. She's passionate and inspiring, and her inspiration is contagious. She really welcomes all of her followers and connections into her business, so you can actually see what it's like to own a business. And that's one of the biggest fears of most people that haven't started a business is I don't know what to do. And you do that very well by sharing that with you. So Erica, welcome to the show. Erica Rankin with Brodo from Canada. And she's going to share her story with us today a little bit. So welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Michael.
Absolutely. So if you were to we start with one question to begin with. If you were to, in a tweet, tell us how your life business is today, and then we're going to work backwards and talk about how you got here.
Totally. Yeah. So I've never done it this way, but Brodo, we have an edible cookie dough in the Canadian market. It's distributed in about 120 stores across Canada, and we're launching a brand new product. Literally today, I'm delivering it to my distributor. It's been 6 months in the work. So we're launching that. We're doing direct to consumer across Canada as well. And that's kind of what our business model looks like these days. We don't ship into the US yet, but that's something we're working towards in 2024.
Very cool. And so didn't you just recently visit the United States?
I go there a lot.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So is that part of your entry into the country then, or is that completely separate from the company?
So I go to a lot of trade shows,
Okay.
and just like a lot of my friends in the industry, go to those events and stuff. And I also got invited to a founder event and got to go to Disneyland with a bunch of cool founders. And
Cool.
So there's different opportunities that have brought me into the US because of my business. So sometimes it's pleasure, sometimes it's for work.
Okay. So a lot of entrepreneurs, we all have a story. I know I have a story, some trials and tribulations, and it seems like most small business owners have something that we've had to overcome growing up. What was your childhood like, so we can get a little piece of your journey up to where you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up in a super small town, 25,000 people. I know that isn't small to some people, but it felt small. I was a very introverted kid. I grew up, I spent a lot of time alone. I was always striving to get really good grades. That was something that was really important to me, was my academics. And I would go home, study, get the A's, get the A pluses. And then after high school, I graduated, and then I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life. And I wanted to take a year off to really figure out what I wanted to do. But my parents said no. They said, no, you're going to get too comfortable. You're going to start making money and you're not going to want to go back to school. And, when they were growing up, having an education was something that not everyone had. So they thought, okay, it's an asset to have. Now everyone goes and gets their degree, and it's so competitive. And then if you want to get a really good job with a good paying salary, you need to get another degree or an MBA or a PhD. And, so it's a little bit more extensive these days. But so they kind of pushed me to go to school. So I went to school for psychology because I've been very interested in human behavior. And my cousin is a psychiatrist and kind of piqued my interest into that field. And again, the same habits from my childhood of me like being a keener, I would stay in the library until the lights were shut off. Like on a Friday night, I would stay in and study and get really good grades. And yeah, that's kind of how I was throughout all of university as well. It's just very introverted, very quiet, kept to myself, low self-esteem. I had body image issues, struggled around food and stuff. That's something that I've always had problems with ever since I was little. That's how I like coped.
Yeah.
I wouldn't go out and even like party or stuff like that. It's like, no, I'm gonna go get like a pizza and hang out by myself in my room.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
there's typically no conflict when you do that with yourself.
totally. Yeah. So I guess that was kind of my upbringing, not too exciting. But yeah, and after I graduated university, I started working in my field at a university and doing research. So I was a research assistant for the biggest longitudinal study in Canada on aging.
Hmm.
And I did that for about a year and I was not making a lot of money at all. I felt tricked by the system because I thought, oh, I need a 4-year undergrad to get a job that pays me horribly and I'm answering the phone and scanning documents all day long. Like that doesn't make any sense to me logically. So yeah, that's I guess my journey where before I started Brodo.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing that. But I think a lot of business owners that I work with share a similar story. A lot of us were introverts growing up, kind of secluded, kept to ourselves. And then, so I find that always interesting because as a business owner, all of a sudden you're kind of the face of a business and you have to put yourself out there in sales. And so it really pushes the limits of our internal mindset. And you mentioned psychology. Did you go anywhere with that, or you just with the degree?
I like to think that I use it still.
Okay.
And I tell my parents that to make them feel better about where they
Okay.
spend their money. But
Right.
yeah, I didn't. Honestly, I got my degree and then that job at the university, I remember getting interviewed for that position and they put me in a boardroom. It was this long table and there was 3 people that were interviewing me and they were taking turns asking me questions, grilling me. And
Wow.
based off of that experience, I thought, wow, this is like a big girl job. I'm going to get a salary, I'm going to have benefits. And then the pay wasn't listed, obviously. And then they told me I got the job. And then I figured out that I was barely making above minimum wage and had no benefits. It was a contract, and I wasn't even really working full-time hours.
Hmm.
So I thought, okay, like, do I want to do this? And do I want to like go and get my master's and then maybe get an okay job? And again, like education is so expensive. And my parents, I'm very grateful. They had paid for my undergrad, but that was it. They said, if you're gonna do any further education, you're on your own. You got to do it yourself. So I didn't have the money for that either. And I didn't want to dig a hole of debt. And again, like I saw my family, like my cousin go through and get his PhD. And I think he finally got it in his early 30s. And I didn't want to, be in school my whole life.
Right.
So
Yeah.
if I wanted to pursue that specific field, I would need a lot more education. And that's not like where my passion really lied. And in 4th year of university, I went through a really bad breakup, which led to me falling in love with fitness. It was the weirdest thing, but
Wow.
that's how I coped. I switched to the gym and
Yeah.
started getting into personal training, and I did that on the side and getting into competitive bodybuilding. And then I realized, oh wow, I really love like baking and making healthier snacks and stuff. And I think you know where this is going, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you got into healthy snacks, edible cookie dough, right? So you were just kind of piddling in the kitchen, if you will, and something just dawned on you. Kind of what sparked that entrepreneur spirit to come out?
It's a very cliche like story. I was prepping for my shows for bodybuilding, and for those of you listening who maybe don't know what that's like, you have to weigh every single morsel of food that goes into your mouth, and you have to go to the gym every day for like an hour plus a day, like weigh yourself 4 times a week, have a coach do check-ins, like there's so many things that go into it. And I did that for almost 2 years. I think it was like just over a year and a half. And I couldn't eat a lot of things that I used to eat. So I would just manipulate recipes. So I thought, okay, I really love snacking on cookie dough occasionally, but obviously like I can't have that. And my coach would beat me up if I had that. So
Right.
how can I incorporate this in a way where I still like it and it's still good for me? So I started experimenting with different ingredients, and I made these little like cookie dough bites, and they had like protein. They were sweetened with like honey and maple syrup, had like oats in it, chocolate chips, and they were really good. And I would just like keep them in the freezer and just eat them. And I shared them on my Instagram page. I had a page called Erica Foodie, and I had a pretty big following at the time, and people were very interested in that specific recipe and
Mm.
product, and it got a lot of attention. And I never thought anything of it. Like people asked me if I would sell it, and I thought, no, that's silly. Like I'm not selling the things that I'm making. That's not a
Right.
business. I can't have a business.
Yeah.
And after like after I competed and I was still working at the university, I felt extremely lost. I had no goal that I was working towards. And I'm a person who's very goal oriented. Like I always have to be working towards something. And when there's nothing in the horizon, I'm like, what is my purpose? Why am I here? Is this the end all be all? Me sitting in a sad cubicle with a bunch of sad people? No, I don't want that. Um, so my contract was coming to an end, and they asked me, like, do you want to renew your contract? And I said no. And I'm very impulsive. I went home and booked a one-way trip to Southeast Asia.
Mm.
And on that trip, I met entrepreneurs, which sparked my interest in entrepreneurship. And I realized that a lot of them didn't have the credentials that I thought you needed in order to pursue entrepreneurship or build a
Yeah.
business. They were high school dropouts. One was a lawyer who stopped practicing law, and he's actually from Toronto and was in Thailand building these giant properties, which I thought was so crazy. And he had no experience. And I'm like, how do you know to do all this? He's like, I'm just figuring it out. So, and the other thing that I talk about too is the conversations that I had with these people. For the first time in my life, I saw someone get excited, like talking about what they did for work. And I thought, wow, I want that. I want to be
Yeah.
excited. I don't want to live for the weekend. So I went home and then I revisited that idea. It's like, okay, what do I love? What am I passionate about? What does the market need? What is a product market fit? Like, how can I bring something of value? And it came back to those cookie dough bites. So I packaged it and sold it as Brodo in December of 2019 was when I launched the business.
Wow. So you immediately came up with the name and everything and just went after it.
Yeah, I mean, it was like so I got home, I think in February from my trip in 2019, and I took some time to really figure out how to like start a business because I had no clue.
Yeah.
The first thing I did, I Googled business workshop near me, and I drove out to the closest business resource center, and we're all just a bunch of business noobs sitting in a room with a whiteboard, and they're teaching us how to like write a business plan, how to market a product, how to manage cash flow, like the very bare bone basics.
Yeah.
And then from there, I thought, okay, I need a kitchen now. So I can't afford to use a kitchen in Toronto, move to Toronto because I lived over an hour from the city. And I wanted just like a clean start. And I went on, we have a website called Kijiji. It's kind of like Craigslist.
Hmm.
It's not as sketchy as Craigslist, but
Thanks for the
I went
clarification.
yeah, I went on and I found a roommate, and I never met her. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna move to like it's Ottawa. So it was a 6.5 hour drive from my hometown. And I'd been there once before and I kind of liked the city, and I found a cheap kitchen to use and rent was affordable. So I thought, I'll just pick up and go there and start
Yeah.
the business there. So I did that. And everything worked out and we got along really well. But that was kind of again another impulsive decision, but it ended up working out for me. So yeah.
Well, so you launched in December of 19, is that what you said?
Yeah, December 2019.
And then we all kind of know what happened a few months later with COVID shutting down. And so I know a lot of business owners that were so amped up, ready to go, and then that happened. How did you deal with that as a business owner? And so I want business owners to hear that because it may not always be COVID or a pandemic. It could be the economy. It could be your building catches on fire. But that was a pivoting moment that I think a lot of people had to work through, and nobody knew how. How did you deal with that?
Mm-hmm. It was honestly a kind of a blessing in disguise for me. I know my story is not super common, but and it did suck in a way too because I have a refrigerated product and I really wanted to get into stores. And usually when you're building a food business, you want to go to farmers markets, you want to get feedback from customers. Like you need those interactions to just help you really dial things in before you invest more time and money into the business. So it was really hard getting that direct feedback when you literally couldn't see people.
Yeah,
So
right.
even my friends, and I lived in Quebec at the time, and they had a curfew, so you couldn't leave past 8 p.m. and it was crazy. But yeah, I mean, I had all these plans. I booked all these trade shows, and then, email after email, we're canceling, we can't do it, we're canceling. And I thought, okay, crap, like, what am I gonna do? And luckily, everyone was at home scrolling on social media, and I took advantage of platforms like TikTok and Instagram, and didn't really have money for marketing. So, and like, I'm at home, have no social life, I'm not doing anything. I'm just going to make a ton of content. So that's what I did. And luckily I was able to grow my following pretty organically. And because everyone was, they're increasing their screen time every day, sitting at home, I did very well with my online sales for about 2 years, because, things would open up and then they would close down again. And it kind of, yeah, did work in my favor in some ways.
Were you also holding another job, or were you 100% committed to Brodo?
I was committed to it. I had a bit of savings, and then, yeah, as like time went on, I started doing like little side things like TikTok consulting. I have a TikTok course. Now I do like a few other things and do some part-time stuff. But I did go into it with 2 feet.
Very cool. So, what were some of the early pivots? Because I know, like I mentioned before, you're very upfront with what it's like to really own a business. And I think there's a lot of myths out there that entrepreneur wannabes, they think these things will happen, and those are actually myths. So, what were some of the early pivots that you went through? I know sometimes you would share a video of you in your apartment and all the boxes and cookie dough and stuff. What were some of those early things that you learned that could help maybe another small business owner get past?
Mhm. Oh, I did so many pivots. One mistake that I made, and I think when you start a business, you have this big idea in your head, like, I need to have my own business space and I need to like separate my personal life from the business. And so I did that. I got a warehouse, which was so stupid. And it
Mm,
was running me like $800 a month or something. And I look back at pictures of this space that I had, and it was a giant floor in the back of this, I don't even know, like industrial warehouse with like stairs. And I think I was using maybe like 20% of this space. It was so silly. And I thought, oh, I'll fill it up quick. Like, I'll scale the business quick. It'll get full
yeah.
soon. No, it never did. But
Was that
yeah,
to
and
store the cookie? I mean, was it
it was
refrigerated
just
or?
like, it was a mental thing for me.
Okay.
So at first, so when I first started the business, I think it's just embracing what you're doing and doing whatever it is that it takes to get it to the next level, right? Like, you can't operate like you're doing $1 million in sales at the beginning, right? Like, you work your way up to that. And I had the different mindset, like, I want to look legit and I want to,
Yeah.
buy the fancy business cards and the labels, and you don't need all that stuff. You just have to prove a concept and do weird things to get there. Like, the first 3 months I drove with product in the back of my car with the heat off in the Canadian winter. And,
Mm,
that's how I stored my product. And then I had a little bit of money, so I invested in storage. And then I got that warehouse because I felt almost embarrassed to like be working out of my apartment. Um, and then I got a bookkeeper, and I started looking at like all of my like cash flow, and realized, wow, this is really stupid. I'm not making any money. So I took everything out of there and moved it into my living room.
mm.
And that was kind of like, you know, it took a blow to my ego, because I thought, wow, now like if I have people over, they're gonna see a freezer in my living room and all these labels and boxes, and even my balcony. Like, I had no personal space anymore. But I realized, this is my life. I chose this path. I need to do this to get to the next level. And then eventually, you pivot out of that space and you go into a bigger operations where you can outsource stuff and have like a warehousing and 3PL. And so yeah, I guess I have pivoted a lot in terms of the growth of the business. And then on the personal side of things, just, I guess, restructuring my life and the people that I affiliate with as well.
Mm.
Like, that has been a huge thing for me. I spent a long time around the wrong people who were more like anchors rather than like oars for a boat,
Yeah. Uh-huh.
um, and it was a really bittersweet for me, but you kind of have to, you can still have those people in your life. They just can't be in your immediate circle because they're not going to help you get to where you need to go. And I had to hire a business coach, and she kind of helped me work through that process because it's hard, especially if you're a solo founder and you've never done anything like this before, to make those changes. And you also don't really know where to go to like find community. It can be very isolating.
Absolutely. Yeah. Finding the right circle, if you will, that kind of is a fit for where you're at in business is sometimes difficult to do. So the big lesson that I see a lot of business owners make that we can help other new business owners not make is what you said earlier about that mindset of I want to pretend like we're big. And so I see a lot of business owners, you walk into their office and they've got the cream of the crop Taj Mahal type office furniture and I'm like, you don't even have a sale yet. So, I don't remember who it was, but somebody was like, buy secondhand or marketplace or, Facebook, something. You don't need all the fancy stuff, but I know that's hard when we're new at business because we don't know what we don't know. And I'm guilty too. I started my first business over 2 decades ago. And of course I had to have I wanted to look like I was established. And I was more, I guess, what do they call that? Vanity. Like when people are focused on numbers on LinkedIn, like connections, and they're not really focused on how many calls am I getting. And so that's a big lesson for a lot of entrepreneurs. And I know some that are still acting bigger than they really are, driving a fancier car than they could probably afford, things like that. So that's a huge lesson. I appreciate you sharing that. And then the next thing that you kind of did, I don't remember when it was. You said you were glad you made a decision. This was maybe a year ago. You were going to get some pre-printed boxes or tubs, or you're already going like, yes, I know what you're talking about, because you're like, thank God I didn't do this or do that. So share a little bit about that and how you made that decision.
Oh gosh, yeah, I had the choice of either buying like 100,000 pre-printed plastic containers for my product, or I could buy 20,000 labeled containers at like 40% higher per unit cost, right? And I went back and forth and I talked to so many different people and I thought, okay, do I go for the bigger amount? Because, like, I don't know how fast my company's growing. I don't know what my distribution is going to look like. I also don't want to spend like an arm and a leg on 20,000 containers when I could just spend a little bit more and get 100,000.
Yeah.
A little bit more really isn't a little bit more, but
Right.
when you're looking at it and comparing numbers, you're like, oh, it just makes more sense to get 100,000, right? And a lot of people a lot of founders in the CPG space who have to like buy like packaged goods, I think they fall victim to this. They think, oh, if I order 10,000, I can get the cost per unit down a lot more instead of ordering 1,000. But then you don't do the math. If you don't get through all that 10,000, it ends up being way more per unit, right? Like if you only get through like 2,000 or 3,000 of them. And I've done this many times with ingredients, with boxes. And then the containers thing was huge. And I luckily, like through LinkedIn, I made many very great connections, and I have advisors and mentors, and they all said the same thing. They're like, don't do it. Order 20,000. When you need more, then you can order more. Just be safe, because you're again entering a completely new space. I was launching into retail, and with retail, it's completely different than selling online. Like you have to make sure the packaging makes sense, the ingredients are dialed in, the serving size, all of that. And I realized that I had to change all of that stuff.
Oh,
And I
really?
think I ended up throwing away like 4,000 containers or something, or 3,000
Mm.
containers out of that 20,000.
Wow.
So can you imagine? I would have gotten rid of like 80 something thousand containers if my business probably wouldn't be standing, or I'd, have like very, very little equity left because I'd have to like fundraise or something to
Yeah.
but that's a lesson that I learned. There's power in that too. Is just like order what you need, and also just make sure you have people around you who understand that part of the business more than you do. Because I'm very good at marketing, and I know that I'm not good at operations. I'm not good at forecasting and dialing in projections and all of that. So now I have an operations advisor, and we sit down every week and do exercise. And it's like, okay, you have 20 kilos of sprinkles. This is going to last you X amount of months. And then you can order, 30 kilos the next time. Like you don't need 50 kilos right now, it's going to expire. It doesn't make sense. So
Yeah.
I think that's really important.
So another nugget you've thrown in here is it sounds like you've really made some advancement in your business with guidance, mentors, coaches, your new circle of friends, if you will, which is very important. Because like I said, I can't say it enough. We don't know what we don't know. So I'm a business coach, but I have business coaches myself because I know there's people that's been in business territories that I've never explored. And so, the food is one of them. So this story to me is very interesting. So if you were to kind of give us maybe a 1, 2, 3 step of going, this is what it was like when I started. This was kind of the medium. Now I feel kind of comfortable. Do you have anything kind of like that comes to mind, some bullet points that people can kind of reference to?
So with the business, I guess just like starting the journey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
With food specifically.
Or, could
General.
be life, could be business, either one.
I think like one of the biggest things that I've learned throughout like growing my business is like having non-negotiables and just taking care of your like your mental well-being and physical too. Like those are huge things for me. We talked about the pandemic and like how that affected my business, but mentally that was really challenging for
Oh,
me,
yeah.
like being alone, and again, like I had a bunch of issues that I suppressed and wasn't dealing with. And I'm a person who likes to stay busy and ignore emotions.
Yeah.
So, when and again, like in the early days when you're building a business, sometimes it's not busy because you don't have customers and you're trying to figure out how to get customers. And so I spent a lot of time with myself and was like sitting with my emotions and all of the stuff that just kind of came up that I didn't know was there. And I, fell victim to hustle culture. And I think when people start businesses, they think, oh, I need to work 15 hours a day and I'm not working hard enough. And, you listen to like the raw stuff from the business coaches and like the unhealthy motivational stuff, right?
Yeah.
That isn't
Mm-hmm.
reality and it's not sustainable. And even the people preaching it, oftentimes they don't live that life, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's just bullshit and it's really
Yep.
frustrating. And I'm
Mhm.
all for working hard. And I think like you need to push yourself and challenge yourself and discipline trumps motivation every day, but you need to do it in a sustainable way. Like it's not good to, and this is what I did. I would work really, really, really hard for like weeks at a time. And then it would get to a point where I was just exhausted and would take like 4 or 5 days off or like operate at like 20% or 10% because I just couldn't physically, get where I wanted to go and put in 100%. And in doing so, I was like, oh, I don't have time to exercise. I don't have time to eat lunch. I don't have time to like journal or check in with myself. And I remember sitting at my laptop from like 5 a.m. to like 12 a.m., like just the whole day and like sitting and working. And then I'm like, you get up and you're like, wow, like I feel delusional. What's happening?
Yeah.
And it got to a point where like again, like I had to like get a therapist and a business coach. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Like I'm working too much and I'm miserable. And I don't know how people live like this. And then I started talking to other founders and they're like, no, like you need to take care of yourself. Like
Mhm.
go for a walk at lunch, like
Yeah.
sit with yourself and be like, am I okay? Do I need anything? Take one day off, like go outside, be with nature, like on a Sunday, like unplug from your phone. Like now there's things that I do in my daily habits that help me just stay sane. And like every morning I have to have my workout class. It doesn't matter what is going on in the day. Like I have to wake up and get it done. And then not to check my phone for like the first hour of the day. And then it's like, okay, I'm in bed by a certain time and I'm not working on my laptop all day. Like I make sure to like get outside. And even though we have lots of fires here and you really shouldn't be outside.
Yeah. Right. Oh man, that's so scary. So health is important, and I totally agree with you. I started that. I would say schedule probably a couple 3 years ago. Well, maybe around COVID, where I found it important to take care of yourself first. Well, there's a lot of, we got to serve other. You hear all the raw stuff about giving, and that's all great. I agree with that. But you also have to take care of number one first because no one else will. And so I think that's another important lesson for business owners coming from your experience and mine is don't worry about everybody else when you wake up. Take care of yourself, get your mind healthy and a good state of mind, and the day will go along a lot better for you with that positive mindset. So working on yourself, which I agree, we all do. I always tell business owners a lot, go slow to go fast. Like it's okay to stop for a minute and breathe, because as a business owner, you're never going to get everything done, and it's not about checking the boxes. Sometimes we might check a box and have to come revisit that as our business scales, right? So we're never completely done with everything. It's always like a living, breathing document, as I say. We're always going to be working on it. So after you kind of get yourself in a healthy state of mind, what would you say is another good piece of advice for business owners?
I would say just be curious. Like that's one thing that has really helped me. And again, I used to be so stubborn and think, oh, I can do everything. I'm the best. I know what I'm doing. Like they don't know more than I do. I've never done this before. So who am I to think that or say that?
Yeah.
So like one of the scariest things for me, I didn't know how to take my business to the next level. And again, like none of my friends, none of my family, I didn't know anyone who has done what I'm doing, like in food. And it's scary to ask for help, but that was something that completely changed the trajectory of my company. Like I went through my pantry and I found a bunch of products that I consume on a regular basis. And I went on LinkedIn and I found the founders and CEOs and I DM'd them and I'm like, hey, I literally eat your product every day and I'm building this company and I would love to just like ask you a few questions as I, figure this thing out. And like 90% of them replied and got on a call with me. And some of them still to this day are like advisors and mentors to me.
Cool.
So it's, just not being afraid to ask for help and kind of shoving your ego aside and understanding that it's for the better of the company. And you're going to learn so much along the way too.
Another female entrepreneur that we had on our show also said if she said, this is my top advice, it would be, don't be afraid to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And I thought, those are things we don't really hear about in those raw books, right? It's more about work hard and do this and do that and positive breakthrough and push through and all that stuff. It's like, no, ask for help when needed. I'll never forget, I used to reach out to entrepreneurs in our community and ask like, hey, I want to know what not to do. And so I would call them randomly, like a cold call, and just say, I need help. I'm new at this. And just for business owners out there, don't be afraid to ask for help, because I didn't get turned down once from anybody. They were glad to help me. Like, who doesn't like talking and helping somebody, experience, what you're going through. So asking for help, and then anything else that you have found to be beneficial.
And I think community is like really important, especially if you don't have a co-founder and you're alone in it. Like tapping into those places where you have like-minded people who you can lean on. Like my best friend, I actually met him because he had me on a podcast.
Oh, really?
So he has a marketing agency and he lives in Vancouver. So he's a plane ride away. But we met on the podcast and then we just became really, really good friends. And he's an entrepreneur too. And now if I'm ever having like a hard day or anything, I send him a voice note or we FaceTime or whatever it may be. And having that there and just someone who gets it and can support you in ways that a lot of your friends or family can't, I think that's really important. Because sometimes you go down a rabbit hole and you're like, what am I doing? And they go those like nights where you're like, lately, I've had many of those nights. I don't know why. They just kind of come out of nowhere and you're lying in bed awake and you're like, what the hell is my life? Like, what am I doing? Like, yeah. I'm like living in a basement with two strangers like that I met on Facebook. But yeah, I think just like having someone you can like message and be like, I'm having a crisis, that's my line. I always say like, I'm having a crisis. I need to talk. And thing. It's like, people message me and they're like, I just really need to talk to someone. And that helps tenfold for sure.
Awesome. Well, you've got my number, I believe too. So if they're not available, feel free to reach out. So where is your business going? Well, let me back up just a second, because we hear this word. I just had a client in here yesterday in one of our meeting rooms, and they were asking kind of like, okay, so everybody talks about scaling your business. And you mentioned the word scale earlier. At what point do you feel like you were actually scaling, kind of like getting past that early stage business? Because I know a lot of business owners, they don't really know what scaling means. So what did that mean to you, and how did you approach that?
Yeah, for me, I was doing everything myself. So at the beginning, at times I was bored, right? I wasn't
Oh,
busy. So I had like product in my living room or my car to start. And then then I would get orders coming in. I would get like one a day, maybe one every few days. I would hear the Shopify cha-ching go off, and I'd go into the kitchen like once a month and make like a couple hundred jars or whatever. And then orders started picking up. Then I started selling more. Then I got more busy. Then instead of going to the kitchen once a month, I'd go in once a week. And then I would go in twice a week.
hmm.
And then things just kind of happen naturally, I think. And as you grow, it's also very hard to take a step back and realize, wow, like I'm really in the business and I need to work on the business. And that was something that I struggled with, is my wheels were spinning, and it got to a point where I was doing everything. I was going to the kitchen. I was picking and packing orders at 5 a.m. and storing them on my balcony in the winter and bringing them to FedEx in my wagon. And, FedEx would see me coming and they're like, there's the Brodo girl with her wagon full of orders, So that's the reputation that I had. I think I kind of like bugged them with it too, because they're like, oh, there's so many boxes. But you just have to embrace it and do what you got to do. And my sales, like I couldn't physically make any more product or ship any more product. And I thought, okay, if I want to take this to the next level, I need to start delegating. And a mentor of mine, he said, sit down with yourself, write down 3 different columns: automate, eliminate, and delegate.
Hmm.
And in your day to day, just take note of what you're doing, right? Like, are you answering customer emails? Is this something that you can delegate? Yes, you can delegate it. Drop that in that bucket. And then same with like operations, like you're making your product. Can you get someone else to make it for you based off of your volume? Yes, you can delegate. And then automating, like emails, for example, like I'd get so many emails that would come in like asking, oh, is it refrigerated? Oh, how long does it last in the fridge? And it's like, okay, we'll have an automated email that goes out and answers all that questions right after
Oh,
someone
wow.
orders, right? So there's all these things that you learn as you go, because you find yourself doing so many little tiny things. It just takes up so much of your time, and then you're not able to grow the business. So I mean, I was in that state for a very long time, and I wasn't perfect, and I wasted a lot of time doing
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
But you get to the point where it's like, okay, I can't operate like this anymore. It's killing me physically and mentally, and you feel stuck. So you need to start moving things. And I tell people too, like, try to plan for that before it happens. Like, even when
Hmm.
you get started, maybe you're a few months in, and whether you're a service-based business or product-based business, it's like, okay, at what point do I need to find a manufacturer? At what point do I need to find my first full-time employee? Because when you need them, and then you start looking when you need them, it's too late, because that's a whole
Yeah.
process in itself. Like finding the right employee, even for me, that was really challenging. And now I have like a really great team member who is so awesome, and I'm so appreciative of him. But it took time. And,
Right.
I had someone who came and then they ended up leaving and it didn't work out, which is fine. I think there's like a lot of blessings in disguises in entrepreneurship, but yeah.
No, that's great advice. So what were those buckets again? You said eliminate, delegate, and automate.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh, that's powerful right there. So I had a business owner in another meeting room just this week, and they're like, "What should I do next? Because I feel like I'm out of time. Like there's no more bandwidth. I can't grow my company." And I said, "Well, the first thing, what's the number one thing that's taking most of your time?" And he said, "Just answering the phone. Takes 3 to 4 hours a day answering customer calls." And I was like, "Well, then that's the first thing you can delegate, because anybody can answer the phone. You
I
got to find the right person, but." So that's you're full of great nuggets today. So you're helping a lot of people. So today, Brodo is I don't see boxes in the background there. So do you have a fulfillment center, or do you still do a lot of it yourself?
It's like half and half, kind
Okay.
of. I'm still in that very much scrappy entrepreneur. Like, for example, I'm delivering a order to my distributor today, and I'm gonna go deliver it in my Jeep. So I'm gonna pull up to the loading dock in a Jeep. They don't know that yet. And they're probably not super happy, but it's okay.
Yeah.
Um, But yeah, I have a manufacturer that makes a product. So I just ping them, I send them an email and I tell them, okay, I need to put in an order, and then they make it. I have a distributor that stores a product. And then when I started growing and I could no longer do fulfillment myself and pick and pack orders, I found a warehousing facility and a team that did it for me, which was really nice because I spent like 70% of my time picking and packing orders when I was growing my business. And it was very fun at first. And then it got to a point where every time my Shopify notification went off, like the
Mhm.
cha-ching, I'd be like, no, please stop. Please stop.
Yeah.
It's a good problem to have, but
Yeah.
now it's like, oh wow, the Shopify notification went off. That's great. I don't have to deal with it, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah.
Um, there's another entrepreneur, Kara Golden, who I admire as well. She's the founder of Hint Water. And so she has a book, Undaunted, and your story that you're telling is almost identical to her book. Like she was driving around with hint water in the back of her car and taking it here and taking it there, and just all the challenges of distributing and all that stuff. So if anybody wants a good book, interesting book to read, that's a good one too. But you've mentioned some nuggets. Have you read the book E-Myth?
You know what? So I met someone like a week ago and they're like, you need to read this book. And
Yes.
they sent me a picture of the cover and it's my next book that I want to read. But yeah, now I have to read it.
Yes, I highly encourage you. It's an old classic, but it still stands the test of time. Everything that it talks about is so valuable. And I still meet entrepreneurs who haven't read it. So I'm like, have you read this yet? Some people are like, oh my gosh, I've read it 20 times. And then others are like, I've never heard of it. So now that's a great book to read. Kara's is a great book. Michael Gerber's, who writes the E-Myth. And for anyone wondering, when they go search it, it's E-Myth Revisited. It's the same book. So where do you see, we're about out of time, I can't believe this, but where do you see Brodo going in the future? I know successful entrepreneurs have some kind of strategy or plan, and you said you were goal oriented. So what does that look like? Where are we going to see Brodo?
Yeah, I want it to be a household name across North America. Like that's the goal.
I do
And
too. I've been texting,
yeah,
or I mean,
yeah,
DMing you like, when are you coming to
I
the
know.
US?
I know we're working on it. It's just you need a lot of money to
Oh,
enter new markets. So but yeah, I mean it's like a hockey stick, right? Like I'm kind of like at the bottom. I'm still going. I'm figuring stuff out and I'm raising money right now. It's something I've never done before and I've decided to take the path of growth and I want to scale the company. I want to get like massive distribution and we spent 6 months of this year just fixing the product and making some changes to it. Cause like I told you, those tubs that we had, they weren't working on shelf. They weren't moving. They weren't being purchased. So I thought, okay, we need to fix it. So now we're launching an improved version of Brodo like this week, which is
oh, cool.
crazy. Um, but yeah, like I guess I pivoted the company out of it being just a cookie dough company, and we want to be a nostalgic snack company. And our mission is to create a world where people can relive their childhoods through their taste buds in a healthier
Oh,
way. So, like you can have all those nostalgic treats, but not have like all the excess sugar and crappy ingredients and preservatives and colors and all of that in there. So this new product is kind of the first staple product of our product portfolio. And then we're going to launch new ones down the line. So yeah, just being an innovative, fun brand that people love and resonate with. So
you said you were raising money. Is that still only available in Canada?
no, actually I have a US investor. He's my lead investor.
Oh,
So
okay.
taking investment from anyone in North America. It's just my seed round. And we are going to be entering the US market in early 2024 with a shelf stable product online, and it's going to be made in the US. My friend is a manufacturer in Texas, actually. So I spent some time out there earlier this year
Yeah.
doing a little bit of product development with him. So that's like
So
coming on the pipeline. But I have like so many things happening right now. And I think sometimes I fall subject to shiny object syndrome. It's
mm.
like US. And it's like, he can't.
Yeah, yeah, got to take care of what we have already built. And so Texas is just one state away from me, so I'll be able
Yeah,
to drive down there and get some. So
totally.
any last bit of advice? You've had so much, so if you're out of advice, that's all right. But any last words of wisdom you'd like to share?
Last words of wisdom.
Could be a quote, a book.
I think like I have like a couple good ones actually. Um yeah, like Ed Milet, so he's one of my mentors. I love him. I think he's really intelligent. He says lessons are caught, not taught, which I think is
Ooh,
huge.
yeah.
And even with like the company culture, I only have like one full-time employee, but I want to build a company that has a very healthy culture, and it's leading by example, right? Like you can tell someone to do things a certain way, but if you're not living to that standard, they're not going to do it. If they see you out, taking weeks off at a time, slacking, not showing up, eating unhealthily, not exercising, that's setting the bar, right? You're setting the bar pretty low. So I think living to a higher standard and just showing people, you don't have to tell them anything. They just are going to view you doing that. And then, it's going to hopefully inspire them to live to a higher standard too and show up better for themselves in their day to day. So that's something that I really love and I preach. And then the other thing that he says is outlast the temporary. So whenever you have these temptations that come up, whether it be, like I have a project due and my friends are inviting me out for drinks, does this serve me? Is this going to serve me like in a year or 2 years or 3 years? Like this is a temporary vice, right? So now when I have opportunities come up like that, I'm like, that would be fun, but it's temporary and it's not serving my bigger vision and mission in life. So you can still have fun, but I think trying not to give into that all the time, because when you're living this life and going down this path of entrepreneurship, you're not doing the same thing as most are. So you have to take and make different sacrifices that most don't, right?
Right. And you just threw out another nugget. You're just full of them today, is have a mission and a vision so that you can make those determining factors as you go along in life. So I'm confident that people will want to connect with you or follow you. What's the best way to do that?
So yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Erica Rankin. I'm on Instagram, Life of Erica, and the O is a 0. And then our business handle is Eat Brodo on everything.
Okay. And then you said you were have a course. Was it TikTok or?
Yeah, I do. I have a course on TikTok and my website's growwitherica.com.
Okay. Very cool. Well, thank you again so much. It's been a pleasure. I can't wait to have some edible cookie dough in the United States. And we will check in with you later and watch and follow your success. So thanks again for taking time to share with me and also all the small business owners that are listening. And I hope you have a wonderful day.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. You too.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Small Business Pivots. A lot of small business owners are feeling stuck, bogged down, barely making ends meet. But it's Michael's passion to help you change all of it. We hope you've enjoyed the show, and we hope you've gotten some useful advice from it. If you did, make sure to like, rate, and review. And we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, find us on YouTube at Business Ownership Simplified. See you next time on Small Business Pivots.